So greetings and welcome everyone in this class today. In the beginning, it's very important, as we always stress, to adjust the motivation. It should not be a problem because I think you have heard many instructions and many advice on how to adjust the motivation. Every Lama, every virtuous friend, Geshe, who comes and gives a teaching, at the beginning, they always talk about the adjusting the motivation. There might be a bit of variation in the presentation. Sometimes it's more extensive, a little bit more condensed at other times, but you have heard it many times. So you know how important it is. We are going to spend the next hour and a half together, and if we adjust the motivation correctly, this time will not go to waste. So we're going to recite Refuge and Bodhicitta verse together with Gaden to adjust the motivation. All right, so last week we talked a little bit about the mind, and today we introduced the mind and mental factors. We mentioned that mind and mental factors are concomitant, or they have similarities in 5 different ways. So we will explain what it means to be concomitant here. All right, so first of all, let's look at the text that is called by Master Asanga, Differentiating the Middle from the Extremes. It describes their difference between main mind and mental factors. And it says the difference between them is that the main mind is looking at the object, the main object, right? Whilst the mental factors comprehend the specifics of that object, specific characteristics of that object. And also in Abhidharma, we have a very similar presentation to that. Okay, so in Abhidharma, we say the presentation is similar, but of course, it's using different words. So it describes the main mind as the one that focuses on the nature of the object, and mental factors as focusing on the same object, but observing different characteristics and having the function of observing different engaging different characteristics. So again, we're reading from the Abhidharma in the root text. It says, so when sense awareness is focusing on it's observing the object, is it necessary that it generates ascertaining awareness? The answer to that is no, it doesn't need to ascertain it. What happens is that the main mind is observing form, and the mental factors, whilst observing the same focal object, they actually engage, they differentiate in the way that they engage it. So it is actually explaining how the main mind engages the object. And it says the main mind engages the object through the different functions of the mental factors. So each one of the mental factors plays a different role, has a different function. And through its their different functions, they allow the main mind to engage the object. So it says, for example, if we're dealing, if it is the case of an object that is previously realized, how is it the case that the main mind engages the object without forgetting it? This happens through the function of the mental factor of recollection, and how it is that the main mind actually experiences the object. It happens through the mental factor of feeling. So what we say here is that the mind and mental factor, they actually observe and engage the same object. But the way that the main mind engages the object is through the different function or the different hand imprint of each one of the mental factors. So we say that each mental factor has its own specific function. And here is using the term hand imprint. So, you know, when you touch, let's say you touch glass or whatever, with your hand, you leave your hand imprint on that surface, isn't it? So what does that mean? It means that the main mind will engage, let's say, the object, and will have an experience of the object. So exactly as the mental factor of feeling feels the object, the main mind will also feel the object in the same way. Exactly the way that the mental factor of recollection remembers the object, the main mind will remember the object. Exactly the same mind, that the same way that the mental factor of wisdom analyzes the object, the main mind will analyze the object. So this is what it means through the function and the hand imprint of each mental factor. So then the question arises, what are mind and mental factors? Are one in nature, are one in substance, or are they different? Actually, the text says that they have the same substantial cause, which means they are one in substance. They arise simultaneously, which means they occur at the same time. And they are not different nature, meaning they are one in nature. So they are one in nature and they occur simultaneously because they are concordant in 5 aspects. Since they are concordant in 5 aspects, you cannot say that they occur at different time, that they have different substance, that they have different focal object, or that they are different nature. Okay, so now we say they are one in nature, they're one in substance, one substance. So someone might think, all right, so are they just one thing? Are they one and the same? Are they the same thing? Okay, and we say, no, they are not the same. All right, so how do we explain this? So, for example, when you have awareness seeing form, you see form, and then later on you remember form, you have recollection of form. At that time, you have a main mind, and at the retinue of this mind, you have memory. Both the main mind and that mental factor of memory are actually focusing or perceiving the same object, which is form, right? However, those two things are posited as different. When we say they are one nature but are posited as different, the way that we explain this is that the main mind actually ascertains the nature of that form. However, the mental factor of recollection makes sure that you later on will not forget the object. So it maintains that memory, further memory of that object. So they're not different in nature, such as, for example, the vase and the pillar, that are two completely different things, distinct things. Here they are one in nature, but we posit them as different. All right, so as we say, this is actually the way they are presented, one in nature, but posited as different. And this is how it is also explained in Kuntu, in the Compendium. If we look at the definition that we have in Similarity, which is the 100 types of valid reasoning, Yeah. Oh, in the... Okay, sorry, it is the Semitic Gen. So it is the ornament of valid reasoning. Okay, the ornament of valid reasoning gives a definition of main mind and mental factors that is very, very similar to the one that we read last week from our book. So it says the definition of a main mind is that which is concordant with the mental factor that abide in its retinue, and the concordant in 5 aspects with the mental factor arising in its retinue. And the definition of mental factors is that which abides with a 5-fold concordant with the main mind in whose retinue it arises. So it is almost identical with the definitions that we have. All right, so Obviously, here we have given the definition and have spoken a little bit about mind and mental factors. Obviously, there will be different types of classifications and lists of all those things that will follow. But so far, do you have a concept of mind and mental factors? Does that arise in your mind? Like, do you have an idea? What different types of mind are there? So you must have a general idea of what mind is, because if you don't have, a general idea of what main mind is, you won't be able, all this conversation about mind, mental factors is, how are you going to understand mental factors if you don't understand the main mind? Because if you understand the main mind, then you understand that you have mental factors that are concomitant or concordant with that main mind in 5 ways. Okay, so last week we talked about main minds, and we say that there is this presentation that the 6 types of consciousness are main minds, and then specifically the 6th one, which is mental consciousness, it is considered to be main mind, and it's very important. Why it is very important? Because it becomes a foundation upon which you place all the imprints, and therefore it needs to be there as a foundation, and it needs to be very, very stable. So because it is very important and very stable, it is main mind. So you could have this as what is main mind? That's main mind. All right. Okay, so we say that mind and main mind and mental factors are concomitant or are similar in 5 aspects. The way that these are presented in Abhidharma and in Kundu are slightly different. Anyway, we will start this presentation of the 5 aspects of similarity according to Abhidharma. So we are enumerating now. So first of all, they are concomitant in terms of support. Number 1 is support. Number 2, concomitant in terms of the focal object. Number 3, concomitant in terms of the aspect. Number 4, in terms of time. And number 5, in terms of substance. Okay, so the first one, we say they are similar or they are concomitant in terms of support. In terms of support means that they arise in dependence on the same sense faculty. So that sense faculty is their support, and they arise in terms of that basis, that support. Okay, so when we say that they are similar or concomitant in terms of their support, it means whatever sense faculty will be the support to generate the main mind, that same faculty will be the support for generating the mental factor, right? So they rely upon the same thing, the same support for their generation. Okay, that was number 1. Number 2, they are concomitant in terms of the focal object. The focal object is the object that they are observing, right? So whatever the main mind is observing, whatever object the main mind is observing, the same thing the focal object is observing. Whatever the focal object is observing, the main mind is also observing the same thing. They are looking at the same focal object. All right, so let's look at the 3rd aspect, which is actually they're concomitant in terms of aspect. All right, so it means that whatever is the aspect that appears in the main mind, this will also be the aspect of the mental factor and vice versa. So let's say that the aspect of the main mind is blue. So let's say that we have eye awareness that is observing an object. And if that object has a blue aspect, has a blue color, then that eye awareness will come to have this blue aspect. So it's generated or it becomes the blue aspect. Guess what I said? I explained this earlier, where I said, imagine that you have a piece of cloth. If the piece of cloth is white and on top of that, you have a layer of glass. When you look at the glass almost has this white aspect due to the cloth that is underneath. Now imagine that the cloth is blue. So if the underlying layer is blue, then the glass that you put on top of that becomes blue, isn't it? So now the glass has taken the blue aspect. So this is what happens with eye awareness, observing the blue aspect of the object. It also comes to have a blue aspect. And the mental factor also has the same blue aspect. So they have the same aspect of that object that they are observing. Okay, so the thing is that with a main mind, when the main mind is engaging an object, the object is projecting its aspect to that awareness, to that main mind. And that main mind comes to possess the aspect of that object, right? So, for example, if the object is the vase is projecting its aspect to that awareness, comprehending vase, and that awareness is generated in the aspect of the vase. It possesses the aspect of the vase. All right, so the other aspect of concomitance that we want to see is substance between mind and mental factors. So usually when we describe things, we talk about them being produced, then they abide or they remain for a while, and then they stop. Okay, so these three, production, abidance, and destruction, occur always simultaneously for the main mind and the mental factor. And that actually indicates that they are one substance and one in nature. So when the main mind is produced, the mental factor is produced. Whilst the main mind remains, the mental factor remains. And when the main mind ceases, is destroyed, the mental factor also ceases, and vice versa. Okay, so these three indicate the same substance. And the way that Abhidharma explains the other concordance, which is time, it says the time of production, the time of abidance, the time of cessation, all three are the same for mind and mental factors. Okay, so the other thing about the mind and mental factors, we say that they are one in substance. So what that means, for example, if we're looking at the mental factor of feeling, it means we only generate one instance or one type of substance of feeling. So if, for example, it is the feeling of happiness, there is only one substance, so it will only be the feeling of happiness. It means you don't at the same time generate the feeling of unhappiness. Also, you don't generate a second substance of the feeling of happiness because you have one and you only generate one. Okay, so that was the example in terms of the mental factor. If we look at the example of the main mind, if you have, for example, eye awareness, you generate only one substance, one instance of this eye awareness. You don't generate second eye substance of eye awareness. Okay, so in terms of similar type, you generate one of each, one mental factor, one main mind. So up to here, we have been following the presentation of Abhidharma, and now we are going to look at the presentation of number Kuntu. It's slightly different. So when it gives the list of the concomitants in 5 ways, it says they're concomitant in terms of substance, in terms of aspect, in terms of time of support, and then it says they're concomitant in terms of realm and ground. So this realm and ground is a bit different, isn't it? So for the first one, concomitant in terms of the substance, it says that, for example, when you have a main mind, you can have the mental factor in its retinue, such as the feeling in its retinue. There will be one substance, but it says there will only be one substance in terms of similar type. If there are dissimilar types, it can be, you can have more. Okay. Then we say they are concordant in terms of the focal object and the aspect. All right. So this is actually going to determine whether it will become afflicted or non-afflicted. So, for example, it says if the main mind is focusing on an afflictive object or an afflictive aspect, it means that the mental factor will also become afflictive. If the main mind is focusing on an aspect that makes it uncontaminated aspect, then the mental factor will also become uncontaminated. Concordance in terms of the time is explained in the similar way because it says they are simultaneous in terms of when they are produced, they abide, and they cease. So the new element in this presentation is that in the list of 5, it says they are concomitant in terms of realm and grounds. So the realms here refers to the 3 realms, the desire, the form, and the formless. And what we say here is that whatever is the realm of the main mind, that must also be the realm of the mental factor. So if you have a main mind that is a mind of the desire realm, it means the mental factors in its retinue must also be mental factors of the desire realm. So the question is, can I have a main mind in the desire realm and mental factors of the formless realm? The answer to that is no. If your main mind is form realm, all the mental factors have to be mental factors of the form realm. If your main mind is a mind of the formless realm, then all the mental factors also will have to be of the formless realm. Also, whatever is the realm of the mental factors, so let's say all mental factors are in the formless realm, all right? It means that the main mind has to be on the same realm. So the main mind also has to be formless. Okay. Then with the grounds, it's again the same thing because the grounds are grounds of the form realm, or of the desire realm, grounds of the form realms, grounds of the formless realm. So whatever the main mind is, whatever type of ground it is, the mental factors have to be at the same level. And whatever level the mental factors are, whatever ground of the desire of the realm they are, also the main mind has to be at the same level. Okay, so here, if we want to look at the classification of the main minds, I would say the main minds are presented as 6, and this is eye awareness, ear awareness, nose awareness, tongue awareness, body awareness, mind awareness. So let's explain the first one, eye awareness. What is eye awareness? Eye awareness is that which relies on the eye and by focusing on form, knows its individual aspect. So you see the way that it is described, first of all, it gives you the cause, because it says by relying on the eye. Then it gives you the focal object. It tells you what it is observing. It says by observing form. So you rely on the eye. And what will the eye observe? The eye will observe a form. And by doing this, it is type of awareness. So it will come to know something, right? So it will know this individual aspect, this aspect. Okay. So then apply this equally to the rest of the list. Right, so after the presentation of main minds, we have the presentation of mental factors, which is actually very detailed and very extensive, both in Abhidharma and in Kundu. Both texts give a very detailed explanation. However, there's another presentation of mental factors in the Lamrim. Okay, so in the Lamrim, in the middle scope, there is a discussion there, presentation of how we enter within samsara. And there it is explained that actually what binds us into samsara is karma and afflictions. And then it says, then from within afflictions, it is important to see the faults of afflictions, and it's important to see how they're generated and so forth. And then it gives, we have a presentation there of the mental factors of afflictions. Okay, so then it continues and says, and what is the nature of mental factor? It says mental factor is that which is concomitant with the main mind. And so he's describing the nature, and then he says, and what types of mental factor we have. And he begins saying, we have the 5 omnipresent, such as feeling. We have the 5 object determining, such as aspiration. We have the 11 virtues, mental factors, such as virtue. We have the 6 root afflictions, such as desire. We have the 20 secondary afflictions, such as wrath. And we have the 4 variables, such as regret. So this is the list that we will be following. Okay, all right, so now we're going to start with this. We begin with the first group, that is the 5 omnipresent mental factors. And these are number 1, feeling, number 2, discernment, number 3, intentions, number 4, attention, and number 5, contact. So Geshe was saying, I will try here to present as much as I can and as much as I know of those mental factors. It is important to be able to explain the mental factors. It's important to be able to understand them as much as possible. Otherwise, you are kind of like guessing and trying to say something, oh, perhaps is this, perhaps is that, like a stab in the dark, which is not a good thing. These are things we need to come to understand. Okay, so the first category of 5 mental factors is called the 5 omnipresent. As the name indicates, they are always there. If you have a mind, a main mind, it means always together with this main mind, you will have those 5 mental factors. It's impossible to have a main mind without having those 5 mental factors. If the main mind arrives, those 5 mental factors come with it. Okay, so Geshe says, just to be clear here, you should know the first group is the 5 omnipresent. And if somebody asks you, what are these 5? You should not be in a state where it says, I'm not sure, I don't know. You have to know what are the 5 omnipresent. All right, so let's look at the first one, feeling. So what is feeling? Feeling is experience. So it means it refers to the experience of the maturational result of virtuous and non-virtuous actions. So what is the maturational result of virtuous actions? It is the feeling of happiness, isn't it? What is the maturational result of non-virtues? It is suffering. And of course, then we have neutral as well. So feeling refers to feeling of the maturational result of virtuous and non-virtuous actions. So that we have something very important here. So we say feeling is the experience of what? The experience of the maturation. So the experience of the maturation of what? The maturation result of karma, whether it is positive or negative karma. And what sort of feeling do we get? What sort of things we will experience? We will have either feelings of happiness or feeling of suffering. And the text explains here that the reason why we have this presentation is solely for the sake of understanding that the results of positive and negative karma is something that we will experience. And there are only two results, either feelings of happiness or suffering. And there is no confusion about it. All right. So the use of the term maturational result is for the sake of indicating that we are absolutely clear here about the law of cause and effect. There should be no confusion. Do not think that you can accumulate a particular type of karma, let's say virtuous karma, but then for some reason you will not experience the result. You will not experience the result of feeling happiness. You might experience a different result. So it's telling you whatever you are feeling here is an experience of the maturational result that you can trace it back to specific type of karma that you have created. So it says there's no confusion about the law of cause and effect. And this is why it is presented in this way. Feeling is the experience of the maturational result. That's it. So you see here, we talk about the first mental factor of feeling, and we say feeling is experience of what? Experience of the maturation. So maturation here is a word that brings with it the word result, maturational result. When you have something maturing, it means you have something earlier on that was the cause, and now you have the maturation of the result. So when you hear maturation, it means I'm having the result now. So if I'm having the result coming into maturity, this result has come from which cause? So it makes me look backward. So the result must have come from the cause, whether it was a virtuous cause or a non-virtuous cause. And accordingly, I'm going to get a specific result, results of happiness and suffering. So what it's telling you is that every time you have any experience of happiness or suffering, even if it is something very slight, like a slight breeze going through, right? If that is pleasant, that is a maturational result of something you have done before. So it's the text says very clearly that the presentation of the mental factor of feeling in this way, feeling is experience of the maturation, is really to make us think about the law of cause and result. Okay, so this is the maturational result, must have come from this cause. This cause gives this result. This result has come from this cause. That's what it is. So we need to consider that any experience we have, even if it is a very slight experience, so a slight sense of comfort, let's say, as we said, a little breeze going by, or a slight experience of discomfort, I don't know, maybe you're pricked by a needle, like something very small, right? Okay, so we need to understand that this, even if it is a small result, it is a definite result that must have come from either a good or a bad cause. So this presentation here is to help us see that there is no confusion in terms of the law of cause and result. And this is actually presented in the context of Lamrim Chenmo when it is discussing karma, and it is discussing the aspect of karma is definite. So what does it mean karma is definite? It means the result of karma is definite. It means the maturational result you will get is definite. If the cause is positive, the maturational result is definite to be happiness. There is no confusion on this issue whatsoever. It is impossible that you created a positive karma and then as a result of that, you had an unpleasant experience. It's impossible. So it takes out the confusion out of the presentation of the law of cause and effect, like it's definite. So it is very clear here what we say. We say that from a cause that is virtue, the result will be happiness. From a cause that is non-virtue, the result will be suffering. And this is definite. This is clear, right? This is certain. There is no uncertainty about it. So one might ask, is it possible that I get suffering as a result of a virtuous cause? We say it is impossible. Is it possible that I get happiness out of a non-virtuous cause? The answer is it's impossible, right? It's like saying, is it possible that white is black? No, it's impossible. White is white and black is black. Okay, so just this presentation of feeling, that is the experience of the maturational result, is here to make us really pay attention to this. You don't like the feeling of suffering? Then that means you have to abandon non-virtuous causes. Do you like the feeling of happiness? Okay, then that means you have to establish virtuous causes. In the Precious Garland, the text, it says, from non-virtues comes the result of suffering and rebirth in the lower migrations. From virtue comes the result of happiness and all good rebirths. So you can say it's like very clear. From here, you go to there. You don't cross paths, you don't deviate, you don't end up somewhere else. From non-virtue, you end up with suffering and lower migration. It's all clear. So we are presenting the first of the omnipresent mental factors, feeling. And we say feeling will be an experience, a positive experience, negative experience, whatever it is. But the important thing here is that it is the experience, this is of the maturational result. So it must have come from a cause. It must have come from previously created karma. So the question here is, what type of cause did it come from? It cannot come from an incompatible cause. It cannot come from a permanent cause. It cannot come from a cause such as Ishvara or the principle, right? It's not that some God out there is creating your experience. The experience that you have must come from an impermanent and compatible cause. So when we say it must come from a compatible cause, it means from virtuous cause, you will get the result of happiness. From non-virtuous cause, you will get the result of suffering. That's a very simple equation. Geshe was saying is similar to having two balls, one black, one white. If you throw the white ball on the wall, what is going to bounce back to you is the white ball, right? Is it possible that the black ball jumps back from the wall to you? Because you threw the white. Isn't it? You threw the white, you're going to get the white back to you. So this is what it means. From the virtuous cause, you will get the result of happiness. White cause, white result. If you throw the black ball to the wall, you get back the black one. So it is like this. Considering this, we find that we find a better understanding of the law of cause and effect. We understand the certainty, and we understand that it is unfailing, and that there is no controversy in the law of cause and effect. And if that arises in your mind, then you will consider it to be a very important point in the Buddhist view. If you find conviction like this in the law of cause and effect, that it is definite and incontrovertible, this will actually make a difference. You will improve. It means your conduct will improve, and it means your negativity will become less. So there will be progress. You will be one of these type of people who progress. Now, there are some who say, how can I have conviction? I don't believe in things that I don't see. They're not obvious to the naked eye. You might want to ignore it, but if you ignore the law of cause and effect, if you ignore this basic rule or equation, if you want, you will find that you go backwards. Whilst those who have respect for the law of cause and effect and act accordingly, you will notice that these people progress. Their conduct improves. So if you want to improve, please consider these points. All right. Okay. So as you can see, we deviated a bit. You might be thinking, how did we end up talking about the law of cause and effect for such a long time? But it came out of the presentation of feeling. Feeling is the experience of the maturational result, isn't it? So there's a lot to talk here about experiencing, what you experience, where the experience is coming from, and so forth. All right. Let's focus a little bit on feeling. What are the classifications? What type of feelings do we have? We have feelings of happiness, feelings of suffering, and neutral feelings. Okay, so let's define the neutral because it's the easiest. So neutral is that which is neither the feeling of happiness nor the feeling of suffering. Okay, so how do we define the feeling of happiness? You have the feeling of happiness when you meet, when you experience that and you want to remain with that object, you want to meet that object. And if there is some distance between with you and it, you actually want to get closer, right? So that means you actually enjoy that thing, right? Isn't it? That's the feeling of happiness. Whilst if you meet with that thing and your reaction is that you want to avoid it, then it must be the feeling of suffering. So Geshe was saying, this applies to the majority of people, but there is always a small percentage of those who are deranged, the masochists, who would like more suffering. They want to run towards suffering. They don't want to escape suffering. Otherwise, the average person says, I don't need any suffering, get me out of here. So you understand the definition. That which makes you think that you want to avoid it is the feeling of suffering. That which makes you think you want to encounter, you want to meet with it, you want to stay with it is the feeling of happiness. And that which is neither of these two is the neutral. So with the neutral feeling, you don't have any particular desire or inclination. You're not thinking, oh, may I meet with that, or may I stay longer with that? Also, you're not thinking, oh, I want to be separated from that, isn't it? So you don't have any strong inclination either way. Okay, so then it's neutral because you understand if the desire or the inclination is, I want more of that, then it means it's pleasurable. If you say, no, I want to avoid it, then that means there is suffering involved in that. So if you don't have any of this, it's neutral. Okay, so hopefully it's clear now. We understand feeling more. Further, when those feeling occurs on the basis of the body and mind, we end up with 6 because we have 3 on the basis of the body and 3 on the basis of the mind. So what that means is that in terms of the body, you can have the physical feeling of happiness, physical feeling of unhappiness, physical feeling of neutral feeling. And then in terms of the mind, the mental feeling of happiness, mental feeling of unhappiness, mental neutral feeling. So 6 altogether. Okay, so we say that we have physical feeling and mental feeling. So what is the difference between these two? So feeling that arises in the retinue of the 5 types of sense awareness is called physical feeling, whilst feeling that arises in the retinue of mental awareness is called mental feeling.
Single.
Yes, 거기도 이나야 동그면도.
All
right, I can hear Geshe, but I cannot see him.
Hold on for a bit, Voula. So I think the battery of the laptop.
Okay, all right. So I will just translate this. Okay, we talked about physical feeling, and we say physical feeling is feeling that arises in the retinue of any of the 5 types of sense awareness. All right, so someone raises an objection and says, so take, for example, a feeling that arises in the retinue of eye awareness. Eye awareness is one of the 5 types of sense awareness, isn't it? That should be called eye feeling, not physical feeling. Okay, and the answer to that is like, no, there is no false like this, because we can follow the verse from the 400 stanzas where it says, just as physical sense power pervades the entire body, so also confusion pervades them all. Okay, so it says that the physical powers pervade the entire body. So when we have eye awareness and then we have the feeling in its retinue, you could call this physical feeling, right? Because it is a physical power pervading the entire body. So we're following the terminology according to that verse. So what we say is like the physical sense power pervades the entire body. Pervades the entire body. It means it pervades everything from the crown of your head all the way down to the tips of your toes, isn't it? So any specific, let's say, sense power actually abides in that physical sense power, because physical sense power pervades everything, it's everywhere. Okay, so therefore, whatever specific feeling is in the retinue of eye awareness can also be called physical feeling in that sense. So the meaning is like this: since the physical sense power pervades the entire body, it means that specific sense power, such as, for example, the eye sense power, is belongs in it. It is found in it, because the other one pervades the whole body, right? So the specific one, the eye sense power, belongs or exists within the physical sense power. So whatever specific feeling we get in the retinue of eye awareness, you can say it is physical feeling. So it is found in the one that pervades the entire body. So it doesn't have to be called the eye feeling or the ear feeling or the nose feeling. All of those, the 5, we classify them as physical feeling. Yeah. Then we have another twofold classification of the feeling. One is called, we have the term that usually is translated as material, as when we talk about material generosity and so forth. However, that term also means like the mundane, right? Something which is coarse, something which is mundane. So you could say the mundane and the non-mundane feeling. So the mundane feeling is a feeling that is concordant with desire, and that desire comes from the contaminated, appropriated aggregates. Okay, so if you have desire that comes from your contaminated aggregates, you're going to have this mundane feeling. Or if the other type of feeling, which is not mundane, is the feeling that is concordant with the pristine wisdom realizing selflessness. Okay, so when we look at the feeling of the non-material, feeling associated with the non-material, meaning the feeling that is associated with the pristine wisdom, realizing selflessness. Again, this is classified into happiness, suffering, and neutral. So when you hear this, you can say, why would I still have the feeling of suffering? So at this point, so for example, you have an arhat, and arhat has abandoned grasping of the self. So they have the pristine wisdom realizing selflessness, but then you can have the feeling of suffering associated with that. Where does that come from? Actually, in the Vinaya, the Buddha is quoted saying that there are arhats who can actually experience a headache, and that is the result of their previous karma. They have abandoned grasping of the self, but they still have things coming from their previous karma. So important thing to understand in terms of the arhats is that although they have reached that incredibly high state, they might still have negative states of body and mind. So residual negative tendencies in terms of the physical activity. For example, you can have an arhat who is jumping around up and down like a monkey. So that's a physical tendency that still remains. It comes from previous karma. Or they still have negative mental tendencies. So, for example, when they try to explain exactly how do you reach liberation, exactly how do you reach enlightenment, they're not capable of seeing this clearly or explaining this clearly because they have not yet abandoned knowledge obscurations, all right? So Geshe was saying if an arhat can get a headache and if an arhat cannot fully understand the entire path leading to omniscience, what need is there to talk about ourselves, right? Of course, we will experience a lot of physical suffering. And of course, we study something, we would like to understand it first time perfectly, but it doesn't happen like this. Even arhats have difficulties explaining and understanding fully things. So that thing we mentioned there about the arhats should really make us think a lot about the cause of law and effect. All right. So let's look at another classification of feelings from the point of view of the basis or what you rely upon in order to generate the feeling. So we can classify them into 6. So really here we are looking at the cause generating feelings. So from that perspective, they are classified into 6. They're classified into 6 because there are 6 types of conduct. All right, so what is this relationship between conduct and feeling? So we generate feeling after we come in contact with something. Contact means to meet, to come in contact with something. They don't occur simultaneously. First, you come in contact, and after you come in contact, you generate the feeling, the pleasure, feeling of happiness, suffering, or neutral feeling. Okay, so we have 6 types of contact. Contact that comes through the eyes, contact through the ears, through the nose, through the tongue, through the body, and mental contact. And therefore, we have feelings that follow each one of these types of contact. So there are 6. And actually, if we follow through all the classifications, since we can get the 3 types of feeling through each one of the types of contact, we end up with how many? 3 times 6, which makes 18. So, for example, you can have feeling of happiness that comes through contact of the eye. You can have feeling of suffering that comes through contact of the eye. You can have neutral feeling that comes through contact of the eye. And similarly for the other 5, so 3 times 6, 18. All right, so today Geshe spoke quite a lot about feeling. So hopefully you come to understand what a feeling refers to, how it is generated, the different types of feeling, classification of feeling. So Geshe was saying from amongst the 51 mental factor, we dealt with the first one, feeling. It belongs into the first category, the category of omnipresent. So hopefully Geshe says, you have that confidence. You should be expert now at the end of this class in terms of feelings. I know everything about feelings. So hopefully this is how you're thinking. If you're not thinking this way, something is wrong here. All right. Okay. So we another 50 to go. We've done one out of the 51. All right. Okay. So we stop here. We conclude.